So let me introduce you. So for our viewers who don't know you, you used to be a former USDA organic food inspector, and you also have written for various publications. I know that you write for Culture Wars magazine, which is great. Big fan of E. Michael Jones, but you've also written for, I think you said it was Tucker Carlson's Daily Caller and other things as
Yeah.
well. So let you sing your praise because I don't know as much about you as you do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Tucker Carlson, the Daily Caller,
Yeah.
and then of course also Breitbart.
Breitbart.
Those are the
Wow.
big
Okay.
American sort of
Yeah.
semi-conservative,
Mm-hmm.
sort of Christian.
Yeah.
Breitbart's really pro Zionist, but in
Yeah.
any case, yeah, they ran a lot of my stuff when we first moved down to Texas, and then I used to write for daily newspapers in Canada and worked in talk radio
Mm-hmm.
and got fired. I got fired from everything
You're
and
such a
wasn't
radical.
yeah, and I wasn't sure where everything was going, and then God brought us down to Texas, and it's I always tell people the only other state if we could have picked, we didn't pick, it was foisted upon us and we jumped at the opportunity. The only other state would have been Alaska.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a hunter, I take it.
I used to be. Can't hunt down here because we're Canadian. So I've gone fishing down here because that's a pretty easy process to get the
Okay. Yeah,
license.
yeah,
But
yeah. The fishing license. Well, you got to get one in Canada as well, and same thing, isn't it? Don't you?
yeah,
Because like when the season opens or whatever, you can't like fish around it or something like that. I don't know. I'm
yeah,
not.
it's very
Yeah.
restricted, very regulated. But
Yeah.
yeah, down here hunting is out because we're not citizens and I can't vote down here. And so yeah, we're just happy to be here though.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. So then, because actually, if I'm not mistaken, you did the food inspecting, like the organic food in Canada and America, so you know both systems.
Yeah,
Are you?
that's how I really got
Okay.
interested in. Eventually, it took like I don't know 15 years, but we eventually moved to America because yeah, I started. Goodness, it's longer than 15 years. Yeah, but I started working in America back in 1998.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just a wee lass back then. That's amazing. So, do you have any experience then in like the UK or EU or anything like that? Because I know that they have their own like organic standards and they've got all this soil alliance and fair trade and all these things. So, just to jump right in, like there's a lot of bureaucracy surrounding food labeling and what food actually is. And sometimes I'll see, because I, of course, spend time in both Canada, America, Britain, Europe, wherever. So I notice that they'll say like sometimes organic has to be 95% organic, sometimes it has to be 100% organic. So where do they make these benchmarks and what's that all about?
Yeah, so I've only inspected on
Oh, right.
both
Okay.
sides of the border,
Right, right,
but
right.
to answer your question, I've inspected to the European and Japanese standards
Okay.
as well as the Canadian and American,
Right.
because it depends where the product is going,
Yes.
right? So the farmer will request the certification for the country it's headed to, and
Right.
Japan imports a lot because they have such low agricultural output.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've inspected, so I know a bit about them all.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can rank them. By the way, Japan has the best standard in the world.
I would
It's
figure
the
that, yeah.
yeah, it's the only one that requires testing. The other ones, they kind of go in descending order. Canadian being the worst. The Canadian standard doesn't even mention testing. And then in the American standard, it's kind of a gray zone. It mentions it, but it's not required. There's these
Right.
different words like, if something's required, then you got to do it. But they'll use a softer word. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's basically the testing standards for America are largely ignored, as we'll get into.
Yes.
So yeah, I've inspected to all those standards. And now then to answer to what you said about sometimes products can be 95%
Yes.
and still be called organic. That's for processed goods.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So that's because you're going to have
It's on the
some.
packaging, right? Like cereals and crackers. It's just juices and things as well. Or no?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
for
Yeah.
anything processed.
Okay.
And by the way, as soon as you package something, you're processing it. So even if you package flour, which
Right.
is still 100% wheat,
Right.
that's called the milling, and then the
Yeah.
packaging. That's called. But anyway, that has to be 100%. That's
Okay.
still, there's
Okay.
no loophole. So it's not really a loophole. I would give them, give the people who thought this up, I'd give them leeway on there's the 95%. You can still call it organic on a processed good. I give them leeway because you have trace ingredients that you just can't find in an organic form. And then there's this crazy stuff. People try to certify as organic salt and water. That's just stupid. I mean,
Isn't that obvious?
yeah. I mean, that's just, anyway.
Where else did you get it?
Exactly. And they're just trying to bump up their percentage. So maybe they couldn't, maybe they're making a flax bar and they couldn't get enough organic flax. So they're being honest and they're thinking, geez, if we could have like there is organic sugar, so they'll get that. But they're thinking if we could get organic salt, that'll raise us up over that 95% threshold and we can still call it. Then you can just say organic on the label. You don't have to say made with organic when it's 95% or above. And it's like
a semantic thing a little bit, but also like the legal liability. Right, okay.
And then there's 70%. I think only America has that. And then they have to, if it still has to be 70% or above, the American standard, you can say made with organic.
Yes,
as opposed to just
made with
organic.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's reasons for that, but then it gets it's treated like a loophole. But that's not a problem. Just so you know, that the problems underlying the industry go way deeper than that.
I was listening to another one of your interviews, and I thought this was really interesting. How the certification process is sort of, you're no longer doing it because you said you would have to travel around and actually see the farms and see what's happening. And now you're sort of just training people up to do it by your standards. And I love the example that you gave, like it's about bookkeeping. And, Bernie Madoff had good bookkeeping, but he was a fraudster. So it's the same thing. Like food fraud is a huge thing. And I think like farmers markets in California and thing are like really, they've got like food fraud police going around like catching people lying. In Canada has a huge food fraud thing as well. Like the CBC did a little expose about that, and they're saying it's coming from farms, but it's not. It's like factories and things. So if you could just talk a little bit more about how that's changed and what the original process was from actually certifying it to now China can call USDA organic food.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so basically the USDA standard, it says right in the standards, it's a global standard. So anyone, anywhere in the world can get USDA certified. And that would be, again, like I said, when I was doing inspections, I would inspect the farm to the standard where the crop was heading. And that's normal when you're an export nation like Canada or the United States. But you have countries like China, Turkey, Mexico, they're not really known for feeding their own people. Let's start there. And yet here they are exporting millions of dollars worth of allegedly organic product to America. So they get American certification. Okay. Now that would stand to reason if that's all it was and it was legitimate. But there's no one's walking those fields like I did when I was an inspector, like inspectors really still do here in America.
They still do in America. It's just the global partners that sort of don't.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, you just said sort of don't. I mean, they'll
being
deny
charitable. Maybe they do, or they actually don't. It's quite obvious that
they don't.
Okay.
They don't, but they'll say they do because how are you gonna find out? And the worst thing is they're hiring a Turkish inspector who's been trained to inspect to the American standard to go inspect the Turkish farm. Now they'll defend that saying, well, where are we going to find an American or Canadian who can speak whatever that, I don't even know, Sephardic. Yeah. So and especially for China, where are you going to find someone?
Sure.
So that'll be their excuse. But we have just doled out to the world. We, Canada and the United States, have doled out to the world our standards, and we just allow the foreigners to allegedly enforce our standards on foreign crops and processing facilities. And meanwhile, Canada and America are export nations, right? If this was going on, and like you always hear about the corn growers, right? And they're either getting a subsidy or they got Trump's ear or Obama's ear because they're so powerful, right? Well, if we started importing just 10% of our corn, the corn growers would go nuts.
Yeah.
And so would all of their lobbyists and defenders in Congress. They'd say, what's going on in America that we're importing any corn? Well, to jump right into it, by my estimate, we're importing about 80%, 75 or 80% of our organic food. Wow. So I could walk through the numbers if you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's nerd right out on this. Yeah.
Yeah, so you'll see here. I can send you these if you want to post them.
I'll put them
Recent
in the descriptions
article
for sure.
Yeah, here's what there's a new deputy administrator at the National Organic Program. You know, I wasn't a supporter of Obama, but he had a really good deputy administrator at the National Organic Program. His name was Miles McAvoy, and he did try to enforce the testing standard. This new person, her name is Jennifer Tucker, so this, I guess, is Trump's appointee. He probably doesn't even know who she is, but, you know, it came down through the chain of command. And she's not enforcing the testing standard. And again, it's kind of a lax testing standard. Okay. But she says the total value of organic imports coming into America is $2.2 billion. And the organic retail market in America is worth about $50 billion. Oh my God. You might say right away, well, Mischa, how do you get 80%? Like, that looks like very, very small. Well, that's raw ingredients. So if you import flax by the ton, and it won't just be 1 ton, it'll be like hundreds of tons. You import, by the way, a lot of Midwest growers, when the organic industry started, they were growing certified organic flax. My family did it on our farm, and the price was really good. Then the Chinese got into it, and the price plummeted. So anyway, that's where they're getting their organic flax. And you bring in the organic flax, you make it into like a granola bar or something, and you're going to sell it, like the markup is like 100-fold. Sure. So that's why you can't believe these numbers. A lot of people will criticize me, like if you look at the Daily Caller article, they'll say, well, right here, according to the USDA, they only imported, you know, again, it's 2.2 billion out of the 50 billion, but you're comparing the wholesale bulk price to the retail price. And I just, by way of example, you know, if you buy a loaf of bread, just conventional bread, it'll be, let's say it's $2 for a loaf of bread. No, it's more. It's like $5. Oh my goodness. Oh God. How much? It's like $5 for regular bread?
Well, like not like Wonder Bread, but like if you go to the bakery part of like any supermarket, it's like $3.99, $4.99. Oh, yes, if it's got any seeds sprinkled atop. Price.
Oh wow! And it's not even organic. It's just
it's not
healthy looking bread. Wow. Okay, but I'm going to stick with the math that I was going. Let's just say $2 for a loaf of regular bread, even Wonder Bread, whatever. $2 for a loaf. There's only 17 cents worth of wheat in that bread. Wow. So then you got your yeast, which is nominal. You got a bit of salt and maybe some sugar and then some binding agents or whatever else. Yeah, so it's 17 cents out of $2. Wow. Just so you see the difference between the wholesale and the retail. So what I did for the Daily Caller was I did an analysis. I just compared the acreage in America that's under organic certification. And at the time of that article, it was 0.7%. So under 1% of American farmland is organic. And yet organic retail sales account for 4.5%.
Yeah, so the math doesn't add up, yeah.
Yeah, so if you just round both of those numbers up and do dummy math, that means we're missing 80% of the land we would require to fulfill the market. And people come at that from all different angles, you know, saying organic land isn't as productive. Well, of course, and that makes the numbers even worse. And then they say, yeah, but organic products get more money. Well, that doesn't change. What I just did had nothing to do with money, right? I didn't say how much. It was when they said organic retail sales account for 4.5% of total sales. There was no mention of dollar value, you know, that those carrots are worth twice as much as the regular carrots. None of that. So it's a real simple analysis. And I'm sort of embarrassed because for years, when I left inspecting in '03, and I knew this from watching the decline. I just knew it, but it was hard to prove because the USDA will never put out honest numbers. Like I just said, they admit, yeah, we imported $2.2 billion worth of organic imports, allegedly organic. And so, yeah, they won't tell you what the volume is. They just give you the dollar amount. If you knew how much volume of organic flax was coming from China, you could compare that, because we know they do publish how much flax we are producing. The USDA is very good. They stay on top of the organic and non-organic numbers for everything, right down to the bushel. Mm-hmm. But they won't tell you how many bushels came from China. So for years, I was like, how am I going to figure this out? And then, yeah, I wrote that Daily Caller. I think it was 5 years ago I wrote that. So the numbers will be slightly different now. But in any case, yeah, there you go. We're important for two nations, Canada and America, that are known for exports of food and food products. Here we are in the organic industry, we're importing almost everything.
Yeah, that's so true. And if you do want to buy anything local, the price is just crazy.
Yeah.
It's weird, right? Because it's like, it's just down the road. Like, why does it cost so much? So can you speak a little bit about that? Is it purely the subsidies and the fact that those cheaper countries can undercut our price, or is there some other policies that are driving it, or why can local farmers, not compete on that, at least on a similar level? It's like actually double the price. It's not just like, oh, it's 30 cents more, whatever, I'll pay it.
Well, there's two things going on. First of all, you have the grocery stores, mm-hmm. and it's open and shut. Whole Foods, Walmart, Costco. There's Costco in Canada. Right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they're all in that. Those numbers rest on their shoulders. There's no doubt.
In Britain as well.
They're importing like 80% of the product you see on the store shelf. Oh, and by the way, remember I said earlier, if you process something, mm-hmm. and processing, if you add water to concentrated apple juice,
that's right. Made in America now as well.
Yeah, that's made in America, mm-hmm. or made in, and then you put it in a bottle, plastic jug.
Yes.
And the jug's worth more than the 10% juice that's in there. So again, it becomes a product of America or Canada. So yeah, you go to the store, and again, you might think, well, this doesn't hold up. Mischa's wrong. I only see products that claim to be product of USA or Canada. But yeah, that's a huge loophole. Again, they're bringing in the raw ingredients, and they're making a granola bar here on this land, and so that counts as American granola. But in any case, then you have what you mentioned, the farmers markets.
Yeah,
and that should be totally legitimate. The farmers should be, standing for their own integrity. But what happened was the cost of a table has gone up, so that they're paying thousands of dollars a year. It's all supply and demand. So the Calgary farmers market, I had experience with that. It used to be on the edge of town in an old Air Force hangar, because Canada doesn't have an Air Force anymore. So there was this hangar sitting there, and they set up in there, and it was like $1,000 a year for a table. And what a lot of farmers did was, if they were known for like Joe's organic carrots, well, you probably run out of carrots in March, right? Like how much, they might grow more next year so they can keep supplying, but a lot of farmers would run out of whatever product. Well, they're still paying for the table. Well, when a table was $1,000 a year, it didn't matter. Well, now they're looking at, a few $1,000s a month. It's becoming sort of like retail. It's becoming like a mall. And it still has that farmer's market feel, old wooden tables and people wandering around in overalls.
Baskets and things,
Yeah.
I was going to say $1,000 a year sounds cheap. That sounds,
Yeah, they're paying a lot more for a table now.
Yeah.
The markets, they're still called farmers markets. They're still run as cooperatives.
Yeah.
You have to be an actual farmer.
Yes.
Good. And the markets will do their own oversight to make sure you're not just bringing in carrots and repackaging them. But I really attribute it to the pressure of the market. If you're paying, say, even if you're just paying $1,000 a month for a table, you can't just sit there for 4 months with no carrots. And I'm not justifying what they're doing, but what they're doing is called repackaging. And they just buy bulk carrots and put them in a bag that says Joe's Organic
Yep.
Carrots. So the markets are supposed to watch themselves, and then you have the media that's watching them. So what I always say, because you can't get organic in a grocery store, is you go to a farmer's market to meet a farmer. But don't just assume because you're at a farmer's market that you've found the Shangri-La of organic food. You meet the farmer there, and at some point you want to get out to the farm. You have to visit the farm.
Yeah.
You have to be your own inspector.
Definitely.
It's really sad because you can't trust this bureaucratic system. To remember, there's no field testing, I think, as I mentioned.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. So then, like, what do you suggest regarding policies? How can we sort of, as the consumer on one level, try to affect some change, and then as the producers of these products, surely they would, it sounds like it's a lucrative business. There's a lot of money to be made, but surely we would want to keep that money homegrown, if you'll pardon the pun.
Yeah.
Why should we be? Because again, in that other interview you did, you were saying like they're bringing in broccoli and things. It's like, guys, we can grow these products. Like, it seems crazy. But is it just down to lobbying and money, or is there something? Consumers want this. Got the watchdogs out. Can we do something about it, or not really?
Yeah, we can. See, now we could take the long road and we could lobby politicians to make sure that, okay, we'll trust the Turkish inspectors to inspect the Turkish farms, but occasionally we'll send over, I don't know, a Canadian or an American, whatever. But no, it's very, very, very simple. You do field testing. So as I mentioned, the Canadian standard doesn't even mention it. The Japanese standard has the best field testing requirement. And it's very important that word field. It has to be tested in the field. Well, we already inspect the crops in the field. It's impossible to inspect a crop after. So if for some reason an inspector got hit by lightning or something, or and didn't make it, I got called to do late season inspections when an inspector for whatever reason didn't make it, and they would say you've got to get to the farm now because the farmer wants to harvest. The farmer doesn't pick his harvest date, God does, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, you got to get, I can remember driving 8 hours once to inspect, and I got paid for that, don't worry.
Yes.
I got paid for my time. And yeah, it had to be done because, and then I did another inspection once where the farmer went ahead and harvested the field, but he left strips of the crop up, which he then went back and harvested later. So you could see there should be some weed growth in there and things like that. So yeah, so we're already going to the farms, and what we're not doing enough of, I don't think we're actually doing any of it, is testing the crop or testing the soil. And that's just dead easy. And the reason we're not doing it is because the people who really run the industry, like farmers don't run their own industry. It's run by the retailers and the wholesalers. They want imports. And they know that if you started testing an organic crop in Turkey or China, you might not get the desired result. So what I did in my last 2 years of inspecting was I went ahead and did testing. I got myself accredited, which wasn't required at the time. They now do offer that. The International Organic Inspectors Association, of which I used to be a board member, they now offer that as part of their advanced inspector training. After you've done all the other, poultry, crop, livestock, you can go take a training course in sample collection. We don't do the test. We're just the inspectors. We collect the samples.
When you say, sorry to interrupt you, when you say soil, the samples, you mean soil
Yeah.
or the crop or everything altogether?
It could be either.
Okay.
It's whatever you think you're looking for.
Okay.
A quick example, Salty Bear, is that if you're looking for Roundup, you're very unlikely to find it in the soil. You'll find it in the crop.
Right.
That's one of the good things about Roundup, by the way. It's not allowed in organics, but it's torn apart by the soil microbes. That's why the organic industry used to sort of like it back in the 70s.
Right.
Yeah. So it depends what you're looking for.
Right.
You have to know what you're looking for. There isn't just one test for any of the illegal substances a fraudster might use. So yeah, whether it's the soil or the crop. And then on the other side of that coin, there are things like 2,4-D, and they'll be in the soil the following year. They'll stay in the soil, even with a lot of water runoff. they'll remain detectable. So you could, in theory, test. You could go to a farm, and organic farmers are supposed to have fallow fields, right? But you could go to a fallow field where there's nothing growing, or maybe just a cover crop, and you could test the soil the year after and make sure he didn't use 2,4-D even the year after. Why would you do that? Well, maybe he had a big bumper harvest the year before and he made all sorts of money off some cereal crop. And yeah, it's all what the inspector has suspicion of, whether it's the soil or the plant tissue. But again, they're not doing that. They offer the training for it, so I guess there might be some of it. But here's the bottom line. I always say, where are the results? Like, we can post these results, can't we? You can. If you were going to go buy, like when you go to the farmer's market and you buy Joe's organic carrots, you can ask to see his certification.
Right. But like, do they have reports that will show how many parts per million or whatever? I don't know what they do, but is that the kind of, like, what you're talking about, results that should be posted? Right.
They don't.
Okay.
You can get all the bureaucratic stuff from a farm. Right. Even you're not a wholesaler or retailer. The wholesalers or retailers, they can ask to see the entire file of a farm or processing facility before they do business.
Well, rightly so. You're paying for a premium product.
Yep, and it's all supposed to be transparent. Well, even you, the consumer, you can do that. Now, a processing facility that makes granola bars, they're not gonna open their books for you, because you're just gonna buy one little case of granola bars, right? In theory, everything's supposed to be transparent. Okay. So I always say, if you're doing field testing, where can we find the results? You can block out the names if you want, but like you said, where's the overall summary or a line by line of every farm that was tested in America and beyond? Where's those line by line summaries? And yeah, it's parts per million. Mm-hmm. So when I got myself trained to do that, and I did do field testing, and I did it with farmers who wanted to do it because they hate the paperwork, and they know, like you mentioned, Bernie Madoff, they know you could just lie. Right. So they said, yeah, we should do a once annual test. And they would volunteer to do a test. The results I got were always clean. And it's called effective nil, because nothing is ever zero.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's called effective nil. That's a clean result. And then there's a level that is allowed in organic under the American standard. Yeah. But I never even got any detectable result. And I tested about 25 farms out of the 500 farms that I inspected. So
you're talking about the accreditation and things like that you got. Well, obviously they were tested before they decided to do it themselves. So why is it that all of a sudden a language is a barrier when before, I would imagine you would go there yourself, an English speaker, you would have a translator, interpreter, and you would work tandem together to do these tests. Why is it all of a sudden it's no longer feasible? I don't understand.
Yeah, good point. When I started, it was like a plum gig. You do your inspections around whatever your area was, and then maybe you'd get to, if you could speak Spanish, or even if you couldn't, but you had expertise in a certain crop that's being grown down in Central America, you'd win the contract to go down and do 10 or 12 farms down in Guatemala. Mm-hmm. And my plum gig was I got to do maple syrup in Quebec,
of course you
Maine, and New Hampshire. Yeah, because I'm fluent in French.
That way.
So that was a plum. Yeah, it was a plum gig. That's
very
fun.
Good.
But yeah, they don't do that anymore. I guess they probably still find French speakers like me to go to Quebec. But
sure.
But yeah, they don't find Turkish or Spanish speakers. And yet, again, we do for the regular market. You might have heard now with the coronavirus in China.
What's that?
The USDA,
I hadn't heard of that before.
And FDA, yeah, they've decided to recall all of their inspectors for regular food, because we do import a little bit of regular stuff.
Sure.
Also, we get all of our pharmaceuticals and our minerals and nutrients. If you take a daily all of that's coming from China, all of it. So the FDA and USDA has, just like you just said, just like we used to in the organic industry, they have American inspectors on site. Well, as I just mentioned, they're recalling them because of the coronavirus, and that shows that, well, yeah, if that's good for the regular industry, why isn't that good for the $50 billion a year organic industry?
Which is healthier and premium, allegedly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And should be, if anything, inspected more rigorously.
Well, quite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully, again, not just on paper, but yeah. And no, we don't. And the language barrier was used as an excuse. So I'm ashamed to say, the IOIA that I used to be a board member of, see the I in IOIA, it used to stand for Independent Organic Inspector.
Mm-hmm.
They changed it after I left to International Organic Inspector. And so what they did was they just took trainers over to China. Mm-hmm. Instead of getting the plum gig where you could go inspect 10 or 12 farms in China and then make a vacation out of it and bring the wife and kids over, or whatever, they just sent trainers over and translators. And yeah, we trained their inspectors. So what you're getting in China, Turkey, and Mexico is some sort of ag grad with some sort of agriculture background. There used to be a requirement. They really liked it if you grew up on a farm or worked on a farm. That's gone now. You can just get a degree in something related to agriculture. And you don't even need that. If you're just really interested and you show that you passed the tests, you can become an organic inspector. So in any case, over in China, that's what we have. We'll have some sort of Chinese professional agronomist who already does some sort of inspections for whatever reason. They then become accredited under the American standard to perform the USDA's inspections for them.
Wow. Sounds like the standards are really slipping, and makes you wonder what the regulation's really for anyway, if you're just going to, slip and slide around them. So hold on, is there because I see other types of certified organic labels, but they're not always going to be USDA. So is USDA like the benchmark of the highest standard of organic, or is organic? Because for example, when I'm abroad, I always am impressed how much organic food, say like Europe has or Britain has, and it's always reared, slaughtered, and packaged here locally, or within a neighboring country or something, and they have their own standards. And so I'm wondering, how come I don't know that they export their stamp of honor or whatever, badge of honor, like USDA does, but is there a difference between organic in one country and another?
Kato, remember,
yeah,
the USDA, they're exporting their standard,
right?
But we're hardly exporting any actual product. So you'll never be in Ireland, or I'd say it's very unlikely you'd be in Ireland and see a USDA
right
certified organic granola bar. So the EU has its own standard, and then what they have is equivalency agreements. So the USDA and the EU and Japan and Canada, they all have equivalency agreements.
Okay.
So you could see a Canadian certified organic product in Europe, but again, what really gets shipped around the world is the bulk goods.
Okay. And
so at some point, some American oats, let's say, get shipped over to Europe to be made into rolled oats into a granola bar. And yes, it was the equivalency agreement that allowed the processing facility to accept a product that was never inspected to the EU standard. It was inspected as USDA. Then once they start making it into a granola bar, the USDA standard just disappears and it becomes a EU certified organic granola bar that you'll more than likely see. You could see like with raw products that aren't processed. You can see, it's crazy. We see apples, certified organic apples from New Zealand and from China. And again, on the label, it just says USDA certified organic. It doesn't say it's from New Zealand.
You have to do a bit is not listed there.
Right, not on an apple, right? And not even on processed goods.
I thought the barcode was supposed to indicate sort of where it's from, or is that sort of like a myth or something? Yeah,
I've heard that. And then there's an app you can have on your phone, so you can scan. But there's really no barcode on an apple. So when we're dealing with sometimes on processed foods, that barcode might. I guess there is a barcode on apples because you can scan the little sticker.
I used to be a cashier, and I remember bananas were like 4011, and that's what you type in. But they're everywhere in every country. I noticed that. So I think that's just like the standard code. So maybe you're right, but it doesn't tell you what it is.
But even if it did, what would any consumer think going into a Walmart if it says USDA certified organic apple, it's an apple. It's not juice or applesauce. And they would think, well, that's from Washington. They grow apples in Washington. I mean, goodness,
Sure.
we grow enough apples.
Yeah.
And they never dreamed that it was imported. And by the way, they don't even dream that the certified organic apple juice was imported. But yeah, just an apple coming across the ocean in a refrigerated container. It's just insane. And so yeah, again, it's the standard goes all over the world, but not necessarily the products.
Yeah.
The products are coming into America. America is the single largest market for organic food in the world. So
Wow.
if you can get wherever you are, if you can get your product into America, you're going to do better. And then the European Union would be second.
Right. Okay. But I think maybe they have more of a closed system, or as you mentioned, if they're able to pass that equivalency. Because I just thought like organic is a certain type of production. So like the absence of chemical pesticides. They might have their own natural fertilizers and pesticides, but they're not like Roundup or whatever, as you said. And, maybe more like watching over your crops rather than some other. I think you're thinking of like an olden day agricultural farm rather than like factory farming. I think that's what people imagine when they think the schema of organic and conventional. So I guess that's what I was trying to ask. Is there different quality levels of organic, or is it just one country agrees this is organic, another one agrees, but ultimately they're all the same?
Yeah, that's a good question. The standard is basically, it's a Boolean equation. It's like a light switch. You're either organic or not.
Right.
There are no levels.
Okay.
And in fact, at least here in America, I'd have to check for the European Union and Japan, but for America and Canada, you cannot claim to be more organic than some other product. That's
okay.
It's not a minimum standard.
Okay.
It's a maximum standard.
Okay.
To answer that.
Okay, it's a binary.
Yeah,
it's a yes, no.
And no one cares how many acres a family or a corporation is managing. There's no restrictions or limits. And the worst example of that is the American organic dairy industry. And so obviously all the cows are American. They're walking on American soil. Mm-hmm. But their feed is coming from abroad, from Turkey, China, and Mexico.
Yeah.
And even their hay, they get most of their hay here, but as you know, a dairy cow gets a daily ration of oats or barley, and that's being imported, and that's insane. But yeah, they'll have a herd like Aurora Dairy. Oh, we're gonna get censored for using a brand, but Aurora Organic Dairy, they have thousands of, whereas a normal dairy farm, I worked on a dairy farm growing up, would be 100 head, and then a big one would be 200 or 300 head. Well, now they're like thousands, and they have so many that in between milking, the cows are supposed to walk away from the milking place, which is all concentrated with manure, right? Because they're all congregating there to be milked twice or 3 times a day, depending on what model they're using. Mm-hmm. And the cows are supposed to walk away from that blackened manure area and get out to green pasture. That goes for all dairy, by the way, not just for organic, but especially for organic. They're supposed to have pasture time. Well, they can't get out to the pasture because there's so many cows. So they just hang around and wait till the next milking. And yeah, if the cows had a dairy cow shouldn't walk that far. So they don't even let them, in many cases, walk out to where the supposedly green pasture is.
Wow. You mentioned about like family farms and things like that. And I think, again, the other interview that I saw with you, as a lot of the acreages for farms, I think they're actually like owned by a company, and then people will like lease it out or something and then work those farms. So are they actually family farms, or is it like some agro business owns it, and then you, as you said, like sometimes people don't even know that they're not producing organic food or that they are producing it? So speak about that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so here in Canada and the US, you're more likely to find genuine organic family farms.
Okay.
But overseas, which is supplying the lion's share of our organic food on the store shelf, It's the opposite. It's
Right.
more than likely a corporation, and they could call it a cooperative. It doesn't matter. It could be not for profit. You know, there are a lot of certifying agencies. By the way, all the agencies are private that do that hire the inspectors and do the inspections. They're all private, but some are not for profit. Well, a not for profit can still pay its CEO $250,000 a year,
Yeah.
and then they got to do something with all this revenue because they're not for profit. So they just sink it back into marketing and they grow their anyway. So yeah, whatever model they're actually licensed under in whatever country they're in, I don't care. It's not a family farm. Whether it's a cooperative or a corporation, it's not a family farm. And yeah, we're dealing mostly overseas with hired hands. Mostly.
Okay.
You could almost call them serfs. They don't own their own land.
I have some friends in Australia, and actually, there's like a visa requirement that if you want to live in Australia, you have to do some farm work as well. And, so people come to pick mangoes or whatever it is that they're growing out there. So it seems that, yeah, you're right. We bring people in as laborers to do those jobs. Well, not here, like as you said, not where we're from, but those other cheaper production countries, that's sort of how they cut their corners, and those margins are so large then. And the quality is obviously not there because they're not the ones, managing their own farms. You mentioned
Yeah.
something about marketing, and I just wanted to ask, is there any sort of standard when you say something is like, government certified organic? Can you make any sort of health claims about it? Like, for example, superfoods were really, buzzwords about superfoods and antioxidants, and this is, this has this amount of trace minerals and it's super healthy for you. Can you make those claims when something is organic because you're assuming nothing has been depleted from it as maybe through conventional measures? So by eating this, you are actually improving your health. Can you do that, or is that like a legal liability? Because I
Yeah,
do
that's
hear that promoting a lot.
yeah.
Oh, eat organic. Even like nutritionists, make sure it's organic
Mhm.
whenever possible.
You'll
There's like
you'll
organic
see it.
ketchup out there,
You'll see it. You'll see that not on the label. That's not
Okay.
allowed on the
Okay.
label. The FDA, you have to go through millions of dollars of testing to make a labeling
Okay.
claim.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like the commercials won't do that either?
The what?
So like you can't do it in the commercials either then, like the standards of false
No, because
advertising.
that's
Yeah.
your label.
Okay.
So what you'll see is health magazines.
Okay.
Will usually, and in fact, if you go to an organic place to buy vitamins or groceries, they'll usually have free magazines that tell you all these things. But here's the problem. So we talked earlier about testing, field testing.
Yes.
And obviously you would test for prohibited pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides. Well, that's just the first level. Well, you just hit upon it. What does the organic industry claim? Well, they're not only claiming we don't use those horrible toxins, and they do use some natural toxins, which are worse, but they're not
I've heard
used
that.
very much.
We should
Yeah.
come back to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but they're not used as widely as regular farmers use 2,4-D and Roundup and all that.
Sure.
So yeah, that's the first thing is you make sure no one's cheating by using any of the synthetic substances that all the other farmers are using. But you're not even like halfway through what it means to be organic. You just hit the nail. Isn't it supposed to be better for you? And so I've always said if we start field testing, it would just be natural. Once we do that, inspect every farm, test it, every farm once a year. And by the way, that'll cost 1/10 what the bureaucratic inspection currently costs. 1/10. But once you do that, then it would be a natural segue, if you will, to start testing for the increased nutrition. And yeah, that is a laboratory analysis, and no one could, no FDA couldn't argue. You wouldn't be allowed to say my carrots have higher beta carotene, and that's good for your eyesight. You're not allowed to say that unless you do the multi-million-dollar double-blind clinical trials,
Yeah.
right?
But you
Who
can't
knows?
say
Is
it
that
has
what our
higher
grandparents said?
levels.
Yeah, you could say higher beta carotene, and
Yes.
you could give the
Like
analysis
3
on
times
the back.
more. Yeah, that's right.
Yep, and we're nowhere near that. We're
Right.
nowhere near. So right now you're hoping. It's like hoping your spouse isn't cheating on you. You know, that's what you got right now, and all you have is a paper trail. You have no actual evidence. And then what I'm talking about is, well, does he actually love you? Does he? And well, you can't prove that
I
with
hope
your
your
spouse.
wife's
but
not
you-
listening.
You could prove that with carrots and onions. You
Yeah,
could prove that they're
yeah.
higher in whatever they're supposed to have in them, vitamin C, whatever it is. And we're not because we haven't even taken that first step into the world of scientific laboratory analysis.
I mean, like, not to sound silly or anything, but if money is such a big thing and profits are so important, surely you could make more money saying, hey, my product is so much superior than yours. I've done the testing, pay extra. People would, like, people are really into it. If you go on YouTube, like, I'd sometimes like watching, certain recipes or whatever. And it's funny you mentioned Japan because they always have like those yolks look amazing. Like the product, the butter, the way they cream it, I'm like, that's good butter. Like you can just tell because I bake a lot. I could just tell. But I think people care about their health a lot. And they always say prevention with lifestyle and diet, right? And so if you can actually, Hippocrates said, let food be your medicine and your medicine be your food. You can make that money. So why are they not testing it? Why aren't they saying, read this paper right here. Our product is good. We can
Yeah.
guarantee it. You will dominate the market. So why are they not doing that? It seems silly in a way, but maybe they're doing like a hand in glove kind of thing where they'll sell the product and then they'll, as you said, leave those free magazines or give money to the influencers to say, hey, say flax is really, really good. And then our sales will go up because we can't say it. Like, it seems a bit nefarious, but you would probably know better than I. But what do you think about that?
I think what they're doing right now is a purely negative marketing campaign.
Okay.
So you'll hear the USDA, they'll say how much money they're putting into organic research. Every year, the USDA invests in organic research. Well, if you dig in, most of that research, in some cases, all of it is marketing, because you could go and get a degree in marketing. That's in some colleges, that's under science, right? Marketing is a science, just like economics and political science, right? So they're actually doing marketing, and they'll couch it, instead of admitting that our federal government is investing in organic marketing, they'll call it characterizing organic products. Well, what does that mean, characterizing? Well, it doesn't mean what you just said. It doesn't mean showing that organic carrots have more beta carotene. It doesn't. It just means selling the whole pitch, the whole small farm, family values. That's what they mean by characterizing, or as I say, marketing organic food. And yeah, it's all negative. Then that only works, like the whole emotional heartstring thing, it only works if you're at the same time vilifying conventional farmers. And some of them should be vilified, but I always say, like, a farmer's a farmer. Even a farmer who goes organic, probably 7 times out of 10, they're doing it for the money. And I don't knock that. I mean, who in his right mind would farm for any other reason? I mean, if you're not making money, you're going to go broke. So I don't mind farmers making decisions. A lot of farmers, they'll do a partial conversion of their farm. They shouldn't rotate, by the way, if they're only partially organic. They should just make those fields organic and keep them as such. It's kind of unscrupulous to rotate. But yeah, sure. A lot of them do that. And they say, I just can't afford to go fully organic. I still have to grow conventional Roundup Ready corn over here, and I can't knock them for that. But yeah, so the that federally funded marketing is largely negative, and then you get the thin patina, the layer on top of the wholesome family values, and the brands are always like such and such family farms, and it's not a family farm. It's like that's a go-between. They'll have many farms under them. Some of them might be family farms, some might be corporate, but you'll see a brand name of Smith Family Farms. It's just a brand name. It doesn't necessarily guarantee any family farmers being involved. But yeah, it's largely negative, to answer your question. And the reason they're not going ahead with what you just said makes perfect sense. If you want to sell a new car, you say, well, it outperforms this car in these categories. Right, for speed and the quarter mile. Well, no, the reason they're not doing that is because they don't have to. They're making money. Having 4 or 4.5% of the total grocery market doesn't sound like a lot, but that's worth more than Major League Baseball.
Yeah, but the markup is enough, so the percentage doesn't really matter. As you
Yeah,
said, from 17
yeah,
cents to $2, that's a huge jump. Like, I think they say like if you make 30 to 50 to 100% markup, it's great. That's way more than that. So
hmm
they're doing
yeah,
well. They're doing well.
yeah.
Okay.
Do you know what they do? So the rule of thumb used to be that a farm gate organic sale would be double per bushel what the
Okay.
regular price was. So for wheat, instead of $9, it would be
Okay.
$18. And then thereafter, the processor, it makes no difference to the processor or to the wholesaler or retailer, right? They don't have to take the risk of losing an entire crop to the wheat midge because they weren't using some toxic chemical. Only the farmer has the risk. So I always said only the farmer deserves that premium. But they carry that premium all the way through the food chain right up to retail. And you do see a lot of competition between like Walmart, Whole Foods, and Costco. So they'll compete, and you'll sometimes see organic product for close to the same price as conventional. And that's good. That's if they want to sell, even if they're selling at a loss, I say great, because that's promoting organics. But yeah, the idea that you would take that premium that you just mentioned, only the farmer deserves that premium. No one else deserves it. If you're trucking bags of flour into Costco, nothing's going to happen to your truck. There's no risk involved. And then when Walmart or Costco puts it on the shelf, there's no added risk for them. So they don't deserve as much of the slice of the pie. But you're absolutely right. They're on that 4.5%.
Yeah.
They're probably making 8 or 9% of their revenue.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I have like a couple of things that I really wanted to ask, but just before we move on to those, we talked about importing food. Have you heard that when they come across certain foods or coming from certain countries, they will irradiate the food to make sure it's not like harmful or anything like that? Are you familiar with that? And does that have any bearing on organic food? Because my mom's sort of like really health conscious about it. She's like, don't eat those nuts imported, they're irradiated. And I was like, oh
Yeah.
no.
Well, as far as I know,
Yeah.
that's really restricted to conventional.
Okay, so it's more
And
conventional.
yeah, and it's not supposed to happen. The other one is fumigation.
Okay, yeah, right.
Yeah, so you have radiation and fumigation.
Right.
So if you're bringing in a container of whatever from China or Turkey,
Sure.
in theory, the port authorities should not subject it. Some people say they do, but if put it this way, to begin with, the authorities aren't fumigating every single container coming in from China.
Right.
Maybe they should be, but they're not. And they do a random testing, or they'll have, if they can smell something rotting, they'll open a container. Most containers are never even opened. Of those containers, a small percentage are allegedly organic. And yeah, so even if the port authorities are basically saying, we don't care if it's organic, we got to spray it because we found a rat turd in there or something, it's going to be such a low percentage, because maybe sadly we would say they're opening very few containers coming in of any type. And of those, only a small percentage are organic. And I wouldn't worry about them, even if they were breaking that rule that they're not supposed to. It's going to be such a small percentage. So to answer your question, they're not supposed to.
Okay.
And in the real world, they probably, if it happens, is very, very rare, where they would either fumigate or irradiate a container that was organic. With that said, you'd think those port authorities, of all the containers they do open, you think they'd be more observant with the organic ones, because they're
Right.
labeled. The container has to be labeled as well as everything inside of it.
Okay.
And they're not, just so you know that. So that plays well for what we just discussed, but it doesn't play well. They don't care, in other words. They don't care. When containers are coming in, they're just doing the same scrutiny they do for all, because there's millions of them. And they pay no more close attention to a organic container. As far as they're concerned, well, our own USDA certified that container before it even left China, so why should we worry? They pay no closer attention to organic products. So that's actually a bad thing, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it'll set your mum at ease.
Yeah, sounds a bit mafia, but yeah, I guess maybe they're not doing that, so that's good. You mentioned that like on a farm that you can have like say he might be growing conventional corn, and then he might also be growing like organic fruits or whatever. Is there not like a risk of contaminating the two things? I mean, it's the same soil under, surely. So how do you prevent that, and how can you certify one thing to be organic when the wind just blows that way? And
Oh,
oftentimes
yeah.
farmers get done in also when the seeds come over when they didn't pay for those, bioengineered seeds and things like that. So it seems complicated. How does that work?
So yeah, there are a lot of mixed farms or what are called split operations.
Okay.
And if you're an inspector, you know that going in, you should pay a bit closer attention. Make sure the
Sure.
farmer has separate storage, and it should be dedicated storage. He can't just have grain bins that, well, if I got a lot more GMO corn, it'll just go into these bins. No, no, no. They have to be dedicated.
Yes.
And then just in general, remember, only 0.7% of American farmland, and even lower than that in Canada, only 0.7% is certified organic. So all organic farms are surrounded by conventional. But the good news is people talk about spray drift. So you'll see in my Daily Caller and Breitbart articles, I quote of two horrible studies that came out during the Obama administration. And Obama is no enemy of the organic industry. By the way, neither was Bush, neither is Trump. They all love the organic industry. But, Republicans get blamed, right, for being mean to the organic industry, but they're not. But in any case, this was under Obama. They did two studies, and it turns out that 43% of the organic foods sold in America tested positive for one or more prohibited pesticides. 43%.
That's America. It's actually
So
higher
right
in
away,
Canada, I heard. Yeah.
yes, and even higher
It's
in
like
Canada,
73 or something. Yeah, it's quite high in Canada. Yeah.
yeah, where we have more land and we're more dispersed than
And fewer
in America.
people. Yeah.
And I lay that at the feet of the imports because those studies didn't delineate. They just said they took product off the store shelf.
Oh.
A lot of it's going to say product of America, as we discussed
course.
earlier, but they didn't care. They just took random samples off the store shelf. And yeah, even at the store shelf where the pesticides have had ample time to dissipate, they found 43% tested positive.
Wow.
So immediately they said, well, yeah, but it was most of it, like 90% of the 43% was below the allowable threshold. But as an inspector, I'm saying, why was it even there? So the answer was, well, spray drift. It's the mean old neighbor of all these hardworking organic farmers. Here's the truth about spray drift. You've been to the airport.
Yeah.
Tell me something. Why aren't you deaf? You should have gone deaf. You see the baggage handlers and the people with they have earplugs
right.
in and head.
Yes.
Okay, why aren't you deaf? Because sound dissipates logarithmically.
Yeah.
So for let's just go with metric. For every meter, it's 10 times less sound. So by the time you're at the gate or parking your car, it is dissipated like 99.999. And it's the same with spray drift.
Okay.
It dissipates logarithmically. So unless you get a prevailing wind that literally blows the spray onto which has happened, and rightfully the organic farmer will sue for loss of income.
Yeah,
and by the way, you don't even have to be an organic farmer. If your neighbor, if he's spraying corn and your is a week as far as a grower is concerned, his spray will kill your elk. And yeah, so they'll sue, and they should. But it's so rare. If in other words, 43% of our organic food tested positive at any level for prohibited pesticides, it could not have been a result of spray drift. It's just mathematically impossible. I'd like to see more organic farms so we aren't so surrounded. But the other thing is, of course, organic farms have buffer zones.
Okay.
So where an organic field is adjacent to another organic field, they can just be row to row.
Right.
But when you're adjacent to one of those mean old conventional guys, you need a 25-foot buffer. So if you go with that logarithmic progression of 10 times less for every 3 feet,
wow,
you're at effective nil by the time you get to your crop.
Okay.
You're literally, so spray drift is overblown. It's like fear mongering to pretend that that's a problem.
Yeah, it sounds like I've fallen for their, oh, it's blown over. Woe is me. I didn't mean for that to happen. Okay. Well, we've talked like quite a bit about like growing food, but what about like livestock? Did you deal any with that?
Yeah.
Because it sounds, from what you said earlier, that the let's just say cattle, like cows or something, they have their ration of hay and grass if they're grass fed, and you said other things like their oats and barleys and things. So, can you call meat organic if the feed wasn't purely organic, or how does that work as well? Because that's a whole other issue.
Yeah, the feed has to be 100%
100%.
organic.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. There's no 95% rule or made with rule. Yeah, it has to be
No, I
100%.
mean, maybe it's like they'll
But
say it's grass fed, but it's actually finished on grain. Well, it should be the whole way then, shouldn't it? If you're going to call something grass fed.
yeah,
Yeah.
it has to be organic grain to finish it.
Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, most cattle are grass fed. That's the economics of ranching.
Yeah.
And then just finished on grain. But yeah,
Okay.
it would have to be organic all the way through. And by the way, it's really easy to get a pasture certified. It's almost just like an inspector will just get out of his car and go, "Oh yeah, okay, good." Because if it's a pasture,
Yeah.
no one's putting money into spraying or fertilizing a pasture.
Okay.
Some dairy farmers will sometimes fertilize a pasture because they're trying to get milk. But yeah, for beef ranching, it's just a pasture most pastures are organic even without being certified as such.
So in a way, then meat is probably safer and less of the labeling, shenanigans like produce would be then.
Yeah, yeah, and meat is going to be much more likely to be. Remember, the animals. We're not importing any animals that I'm aware of that are
No.
organic like we are. All the crops and whole food products like apples, like I mentioned.
Yeah.
So yeah, at least the animals are here. But then when you get into high value like dairy is much more high value than just beef.
Right.
Yeah, the incentive is they're bringing in the feed from overseas.
Okay. Okay. So then it's the dairy, because like of course people buy organic milk and things, right? So if the feed is that the same thing? It has to be organic feed.
Yep, all the
Okay.
way through.
Okay.
Yeah,
But it's not local. Yeah.
yeah. So if I had to pick, I'd say organic beef
Yeah.
is much more likelihood of being legitimate than organic dairy. Dairy, they've been caught many times, and by caught I mean just sort of public relations. They're not breaking any rules by importing the grain feed the daily ration that a dairy cow needs, and they're importing, by the way, a lot of soy from
Yes.
China.
Yes. That's very true. Wow, that's mind blowing. So I guess I just have two more pressing things
Sure.
that I want to ask you, and then
Yeah.
so you like seeds and things are patented and things. You can't do that with organic seeds and things like that,
Well,
obviously. Oh, wow,
Well,
juicy.
see, I think no life form should be patented.
I completely agree. How can you
Yeah.
patent that?
Yeah, so there's all these arguments going on about genetically modified crops. Oh,
Yeah.
they're going to give you pancreatic cancer. Look, I used to be part of that whole anti-GMO thing.
Yeah.
I'm not pro-GMO,
Right.
but I think we have to give up on the health argument. There's no evidence. I mean, it's been 20 years. What are we going
Okay.
to do? Go another 20 years saying that, oh yeah, your metabolism is going to change and blah blah. There's all these things that aren't directly related to your health, but they're projecting that they could be, and just the
Nutritional
argument,
studies are hard to actually control, so it's very difficult to know.
yeah,
You can't
and
lock someone in a room and
all-
only feed them these things and then account for their
Yeah.
genetics. You just can't do that.
exactly, and it has to be long term,
Yeah.
like decades.
Yeah,
So-
exactly.
So for GMOs, it's the patenting. How dare they patent a life form? How
agree.
dare they? See, when they patented the first really big commercial crop was canola. There was a couple before that, but they didn't amount to anything, and they
Sure.
abandoned like the flavor saver tomato. But the first real big one was canola. Canola was developed at public expense from mustard. It went from mustard to rapeseed to canola. And that was all public expense through land grant universities. And it was done. It began in World War II because it was a good source of industrial oil. It was never intended for human consumption, but the canola plant is so prolific. And by the way, it competes really well with weeds. So I don't even know why they made it Roundup ready. Canola, put it this way, canola growers never had trouble with weeds like wheat farmers.
You mentioned that
So,
before about how like rye wheat will grow wild naturally super easily and you don't have to worry about that.
oh
Whereas
yeah,
wheat needs like a lot
yeah.
of pampering and things. Yeah.
Yeah, rye is still biblical.
Yeah.
you
Amen.
can't you can't stop rye. Everyone should have a bread maker and hopefully even a stone grinder and make your own rye bread. You'll never have a full rye loaf. It'll be like a brick, but yeah, everyone should eat more
I like
rye.
those.
Oh yeah,
I like
you
the
mean
brick
like the
ones.
black brick you
Yeah.
get from
Good
Germany?
bit of butter on that. And you're
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, a bit of butter. No. It's a 1-to-1 ratio.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there we are. They stole canola.
Yeah.
All of that public money that went into making it edible. It was inedible in World War II. And we
Still
made it.
is.
And so every deep fat fryer in every restaurant has canola oil in it of some, like 90% or 100%. And yeah, Monsanto came along. And as I said, it was not the obvious crop to make Roundup ready. Roundup ready means you can spray it while it's standing and the crop is immune to the herbicide, only the weeds will die. Canola never needed help, but they did it because they wanted to steal the crop. And once they patented it, their defense was, we're not forcing anyone to grow it. Any farmer can grow whatever canola he wants. Well, not what the market is demanding. The farmer will respond to the market. And if he can grow a conventional canola and get 30 bushels an acre, or the Roundup ready and get 60 bushels an acre, well, it's a no-brainer. You can't blame the farmer. You can't foist a moral argument on a farmer. You can't. It's not fair. They're living by crop to crop, season to season, and their retirement plan is under their feet, is the soil. That's what they're going to leave to their kids, hopefully.
Yeah.
So yeah, the farmer, when canola was stolen by Monsanto and patented, they basically stole all of it. They stole the crop itself. And so yeah, it's the patenting issue. How dare they patent a life form? But to answer your question,
But it's their intellectual property, you see.
Yeah, that's their argument. So do you know the first life form that was ever patented? Do you know? It was a mouse. And how many mice do we eat? I mean, unless you own a snake.
China.
Yeah, unless you own a snake, there's no market for mice. They say they're going to grow ears on mice too. So if you lost your ear, you could get a new ear. But the reason, Salty Bear, the reason they patented the mouse back in the 90s before they patented the tomato was because no one cared, right? No one cared. There's
Starts
no
with a
mouse
and no one cares. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and it was kind of a novelty. People thought, well, that's funny.
Yeah.
Why would they patent a mouse?
Is it for like lab experiments?
Well, now there's some medical research going on, and they're actually crossing the mouse with the pig genetically.
Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah, and it warns you about that in the book of Isaiah in the Bible. It warns that was going to happen. But in any case, they're doing that to try to make pork less toxic and more digestible for humans, because apparently a mouse is more digestible than a pig. But in any case, no. When they did this is almost 30 years ago. So now you hear about, they'll do lab experiments on mice. They try to get mice to contract a disease that we get, because then they can test things on the mouse, right? And so there's a lot of work going into the genetics of mice and rats and monkeys. Remember, they had the first monkey that had AIDS, and they thought, yay, we can test AIDS drugs on this monkey. Why was that a good thing to give a monkey AIDS? Anyway,
God.
But whatever's going on with mice now, it was 30 years ago that they patented a mouse, and they did it again, as I said, because no one cared. They knew that was the way to get us all accustomed to the idea of patenting a life form. But yeah, there's no moral basis. You said they're intellectual property. Look at all the intellectual property we put in as taxpayers. All the crops we have, all of them have been developed at public expense. It's only in the last 20 years where you have this idea that, oh yeah, we own that crop, or at least this strain of it. And that to me is immoral.
But isn't that cross-breeding, cloning, whatever it is that you've just described, isn't that really the moral argument for GMOs? Because they're saying something like, oh, to make strawberries more red, we'll inject it with this like other animals' DNA or weird things like that. It's like,
Yep.
well, I don't want to eat like a pig strawberry. I just want a strawberry. So maybe
Yeah.
that's now the moral argument is coming out because people maybe didn't realize what they've agreed to. And it's like a shoe in the door. You allow one thing, and then all of a sudden you're like eating lab-grown meat.
Yeah, that's another thing, by the way, is there are two types of genetically modified organisms.
Yes.
One is transgenic, and that was the flavor saver tomato had herring genes in it to keep it from freezing.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's transgenic. Okay. The other one is where they just manipulate the genome, either taking out or adding, but it's not. Like the like papaya.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with
yes,
the GMO papaya? Yeah. What they did is they stayed within the species of papaya, and they got an old variety that was resistant to this blight that was wiping out the. And it was a less tasty, less juicy variety, but they stayed within the species, so that wasn't transgenic. And also, they took genes from the older variety and spliced them into the new variety, so they stayed within the genome. But also, they didn't patent that. So that, to me, is a doubly good GMO crop. So I agree with you, yeah, the transgenic thing, that's also a bad aspect to genetic modification, but it doesn't apply in all cases. A lot of genetically modified crops are not transgenic. So that argument that you're making, while valid, it wouldn't take care of the whole problem. But patenting does. All GMO crops except for papaya, and then there's a couple more that are only sold in the third world, like brinjal, which is a root crop. It's not patented because people in the third world have no money. It's basically a handful of GMO crops that aren't patented. So if we, I don't think it'll happen, but if you got politicians to stand up and say, wait a minute, why are we allowing you to own those crops? They literally own them legally. Then that would destroy their business model. And there'd still be, I guess we'd still have Roundup Ready canola, but it would be freely available if farmers chose to grow it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, on the topic of patenting, have you heard, and actually if you look on Google Patents, like China does hold most of these patents about like nanotechnology in food and smart food and how you can like actually track the food itself and then you're ingesting these things and like, what is that doing? Have you heard anything about that? It's really mind-boggling.
Yeah. I've heard nanotechnology coming to the food industry is really bad, really, really, really bad because nanoparticles can cross the blood-brain barrier.
Yep. And the placental barrier as well.
Yeah, the placental barrier, I guess it would be as well. Yeah, because you can go through a cell membrane, basically. That's right. Yep. So that is totally scary stuff. But we need to address one more thing.
Yes.
So while organic crops are not patented,
right,
and most conventional crops aren't, there's still an effective control over them, which is good. For instance, hybrid crops, a lot of what you grow in your garden is, you don't even realize it's been hybridized.
But that's natural, isn't it? You pick and choose the best and you kind of crossbreed things. That's not playing God, really, is it?
Right. And they're not totally controlling you the way they do in the patenting process. What happens there is pedigree and foundation seed growers, they have to keep these species all straight. You see broccoli and cabbage, they're from the same family. Tomatoes and potatoes.
Nightshades cruciferous, that's right.
Yeah. And even canola is in the same family as broccoli and cabbage, I think. But in any case, if you just leave them to grow and go to seed, they'll all revert. So you'll lose broccoli, you'll lose cabbage
Oh,
eventually. You need pedigree seed growers to manage. Those are the best farmers, by the way.
yeah. That's
Pedigree
real
and
farming, really. Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, they're the gods of farming
Sure.
because all the farmers are relying on them to provide pure seed stock. So that goes for most of your vegetables, but even like boring things like wheat and canola, those
Is
are all there's foundation and pedigree seed growers managing that. So they need to be paid.
right.
And it's not patented, but there is a licensing process. And if a farmer is somehow caught growing a hybrid crop without having bought the seeds properly, he could get into trouble, but it's not like violating patent law. It's a
Right.
totally different, and that's been around for 50 years. The
Right.
hybrid seed, it's not, again, it's not patent, they've not patented them,
Right.
but for the integrity of the industry, there is control over it.
Okay.
And you, if you're growing it in your garden and you think, well, I grew some nice broccoli, I think I'll let this one go to seed and I'll just replant it next year. You can end up with garbage. You know, it's worth it to go pay $5 for a good
Yeah.
package of
Yeah.
properly produced seed. So I just wanted to make sure,
Yeah.
yeah, there's no patenting in the organic industry, but we're still subjected to those laws, which I think are totally useful.
Yeah, that's reasonable. So is that like kind of like heirloom seeds and things like that? Is that where you have to keep it, or are those like ancient strains and you're just sort of keeping them alive? Whereas what you've said is like it's a specific weeded, rooted out process of this particular crop to get this type of result.
Well, first of all hybrid seeds, because they're hybrid,
Yes.
they're only good for 2 or 3 generations. So they're
Oh,
constantly being produced by the pedigree seed growers, all of them.
okay.
And they're subject to these tight controls. But also, so even outside of that, non-hybrid seeds, like heirloom tomatoes,
Yeah, which I thought, yeah. Mhm.
yeah, you're still you're still relying, and you still should rely on a good seed grower. It's worth it. You don't want. I knew a few organic farmers that got into seed production, and it's a whole like you would think, well, I'll just take, like I said, I'll just take the seed off the pod of this broccoli because it was part of this great broccoli crop, so I'll keep the seed. And certainly people used to do that, but yeah, you don't want to do that. It's a whole field of discipline that you just leave it to the experts. It's
Yeah.
only a few bucks. Yeah.
Fair enough. So I guess the last thing that I want to talk about, second last, is we talked well, I've heard you talk about soil health as well, because soil is kind of like a living organism in and of itself. So you can't have good organic crops or just crops in general with depleted, nutrients from the soil. And so is there like any sort of standard to that? Because I know you talked a bit about like the nitrogen in the soil being really important and all the other kind of trace minerals and things like that. Is that part of the testing that would go into your, certifying something if we were doing testing?
Yeah, if we were doing testing.
That I should end it with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we could have Miles McAvoy back at the
Yeah.
USDA instead of this Jennifer Tucker.
Yeah.
By the way, and Miles, before he went to Washington, D.C., he was in Washington State. And yeah, to answer your question, he was doing testing at the state level. And I knew him right from the late 90s.
Right.
And I was really happy when Obama appointed him. But he kind of got, as they say, he got Washingtonized. And so, yeah, the testing rules that he did get in place, which are now being ignored by the new deputy administrator, they were pretty lax, but at least they were something. But yeah, in my world, we would test first to make sure no one's cheating. And then we'd test for the increased nutrients in the crop. And if your crop just came out normal, well, that's still okay because at least you're pure because you didn't use toxins. So, but I think, yes, to answer your question, that should be part of it. Test to make sure no one's cheating. Then test for improved nutrition. And then, yeah, test for soil health. Sort of for the farmer's own good. Any good farmer would do that on his or her own because that's your bank account. As they say, organic farming, you're really farming the soil. The crop is just the byproduct.
Yeah, you've got to have good soil. So then what about like the water? Do they use like clean tap water sort of thing? Or is it like gray water? Like what are they using because this is, again, I'm not trying to pick on China, like, sorry China, but like they have this like kind of reputation of just using like runoff water, and that's the crops you're eating. So what's the standard about that? Because I think it's, food is the product of all the variables that go into it, like you said, the soil and everything else. So what about the water then?
Well, so yeah, if you're irrigating, yeah, you're supposed to monitor your water, but the rules are pretty lax. They're not going to stop a farmer from irrigating a crop just because his neighbor is spraying. So that might seem like a fault in the system, but the bigger fault would be if I, as the inspector, came out, tested the water, found it to contain, I don't know, 100 parts per million of 2,4-D from a neighboring crop, and I shut him down. That's it. He's finished. He's going broke. That's it. It's over. He can't afford to take. Farming is operated like on a 5 or 6% profit margin.
Wow.
Which is fine if you have you sell a crop for $100,000. Well, yeah, you got $6,000 in the bank, and that's pretty slim margins.
Wow.
So, some people say, well, why would you even go into farming with that? You could just go invest in the stock market if you had brains and make more than 6%. But again, it's their life, it's what they're good at, and they're, unlike the stock market, they have the soil under their feet. You don't get that when you just have a stock that returns you 10%. There's no soil under your feet, so that's their whole livelihood and for their children. But yeah, any case, the water, you're supposed to monitor it, but it's pretty lax, and I say that's probably okay.
Yeah. Okay. So then there you go. It doesn't hugely affect the crop outcome then.
No.
So what's maybe like, let's have like a take home message then. Am I correct that I think I heard you say, oh yes, you were going to say
No, it's
something.
my wife saying she has to go pick up our son. So.
Oh, okay. No problem. So yeah, this is the last thing really I wanted to ask.
No,
So our take, I don't want to tie you up or anything. So like I think you said that you sort of have like your own little garden at your home.
We don't anymore.
Oh, no anymore.
Because,
Okay, yeah, I thought you
here
said that
in
before.
Texas, we have crummy soil here. This is ranch country.
Yeah.
And the reason Texas is known for ranching because the soil they used to grow cotton here, but then the cotton all shifted over to the southern coastal states, and now cotton is shifted over to India. So yeah, we grow very few crops here, and we have a few fruit trees. But yeah, we used to have a garden at all of our homes, and I grew up with a garden. Very hard to have a garden with this soil here.
Yeah. So would you say then recommend, because I know like, America, Canada, like a lot of people in Britain and like Europeans, they're really into the whole like growing your own food and, homesteading is making a comeback and everything. But do you think that, just how can you be 100% certain? Like you can't grow everything, but is there certain things that are worth growing because, like, let's be honest, they're a bit dodgy to be buying from somewhere else, and then other things like that you would maybe be willing to compromise and buy them because you're never going to produce the same caliber or as much or for that cost. So where's like a healthy line to draw in the sand of what can we do at home that's nutritious, healthy, and interactive, and then what do you think is okay to buy in the shops and not feel guilty about it?
Well, it all depends how much land you have, because right now we're looking, it's about an acre per person per year.
Right.
And if you go full chemical industrial farming, they've got it down to a half acre.
Something for the average person, like a little small family or a couple or something.
So if you're out in the country and had more land, then you'll have more latitude. But even then, you're just going to have much more work.
Right.
And so you got to be careful how much you bite off. But just so your listeners know, if you have a garden, it's very good and very important to learn to discipline yourself to tend to a garden. But like an acre is the size of an American football field.
Right.
So even if you're out in the country and you have a lot of land, that's a huge piece of land to manage. And it technically is only going to feed one person for the entire year.
Really?
So you are, as you said, you got to pick and choose. You're going to get things from other sources. And everyone's going to grow vegetables, right? And the sad part about vegetables, they're good for about 24 hours after you cut them off. Well, yeah, cabbage will keep, obviously.
Yeah.
But like your broccoli, you're looking at 24, 36 hours.
Wow.
Spinach, kale. Now your root crops.
Right. Yeah.
Your root crops are going to keep all winter if you have proper storage, and it's good to pack them in sawdust, and you don't want them to freeze because then they just turn to mush. And it's basically they have to be refrigerated the same temperature as a refrigerator, if I recall.
Yeah.
But in the old days, they would have a root cellar, and even in the warm months, it would stay cool because it was below ground.
Right.
So yeah, your root crops are going to carry you through. But a couple of things to add. A lot of people get backyard chickens, and
not a good idea.
Well, it can be problematic, I would say.
Okay.
If you're going to get chickens, get 100. Again, if you have enough land, get a minimum 100. You're going to lose a few to the coyotes, and they're going to kill each other. By the way, they're cannibals. Yeah, they're like pigs. So don't kid yourself. They're not friendly at all. They're carnivorous cannibals. But you're going to feed them grain and let them eat grass, so they're going to have that nice yellow yolk that you mentioned earlier. But yeah, if you get 3 or 4 backyard chickens, everything's great. You're going to have, just with 3 laying hens, you'll have more eggs than a family of 4 or 5 would need,
right?
Probably. But then they run out, and then most people don't have the heart to butcher them.
Oh, yes.
And so now you're just feeding a hen for nothing, and all the economics go out the window. Well, that's fine right now, but what if Armageddon comes? What I'm saying is, don't kid yourself that because you got even 5 or 10 backyard chickens, don't think you're prepared. Unless you're growing the grain for them, then you're really more self-sufficient. And what you want to aim for is something your neighbors don't have. So if you go into the root crops, maybe your neighbors have the 5 or 10 chickens, and you just trade for eggs. Right. But then the other one, I said 2 things. The other one, everyone gets into, it goes like this, Salty Bear, goes backyard chickens, and then fainting goats.
Because they're cute.
Yeah, they're cute,
but useless.
And then as you know, our hero, I guess you'd call him, Owen Benjamin.
Yeah.
He's got actual goats.
Yeah, he's crushing.
That he milks.
Yeah.
And so I keep telling him, I keep emailing him and commenting whenever he mentions his goats. I said, that's great, but get a cow.
Yeah.
If you've committed to backyard chickens, you can't take a day off. Someone's got to go get the eggs for you when you're on vacation. If you've committed to milking goats, as Owen Benjamin has, you really, he literally can't take a vacation. Who's he going to get to come in and milk his goat?
Twice a day. Or more than that, now that he's got the kids,
Yeah. And now what he should also do is get an electric milking machine. Okay, because you don't want to sit there doing this. Well, when you
give up whacking off to porn, you've got to transfer the skills somewhere.
That's right, but you'll get carpal tunnel.
It's true.
You'll totally wear out after 6 months of it. So get an electric milking machine, and it doesn't matter what it costs. It'll last you forever.
Yeah.
It'll never wear out. Yeah. You just replace the little plastic bushings on it. Now, so get a cow. The cow is the basis of Western civilization. You want to know why India is still a third world country? Because they worship their cows instead of eating them.
I know.
Yeah, they drink the milk. Good, they got half of it right. But what the cow is doing is taking. Remember, I said pasture. Mm-hmm. Most pasture is organic, even if it's not certified.
That's right.
Well, think about it. How much fat and protein is in a blade of grass?
That's the beautiful thing about ruminant animals. Their stomachs are able to convert all the grass into amino acids and proteins. So it's they eat the grass so we don't have to. We eat the cow.
Yeah.
It's great.
And that's even before you give them high protein grain to finish them.
Oh yeah.
They're just converting. So pasture land is usually land that wasn't good enough to grow a crop.
That's right, yeah. Which is the majority of land. I think only a quarter of the land is growable anyway.
That's why vegetarians and vegans have got it wrong.
So wrong. Nutritionally, ethically, environmentally, they're just confused. Yeah.
Totally confused, because what ranchers do is take otherwise non-productive land.
Correct.
And they don't just grow a crop, like a broccoli. They grow a steak out of it.
Correct. And it's so
And it's
nutritious. You don't have to eat like, so many vegetables to get anywhere near what you can get
yeah.
out of the meat. Yeah, no, you're so right. You're so
Yeah.
right.
And most of our so Jesus says, "Give us this day our daily bread." So people will say, "Well, isn't that good enough?" Yeah, it used to be. There used to be way more
Einkorn,
iron
yeah,
in
that's right.
our all of our crops have
That's right.
nosedived on nutrition. We're
Totally.
just we're growing what Rudolf Steiner, the founder of the organic movement in Germany, we're growing what he called empty nutrition.
Yeah.
But meat is still meat. It's the
Yeah.
same meat our great great
Yeah.
grandfathers produced.
Yeah.
So yeah. So get a cow. Now the reason you want a cow and not a goat is goat milk is disgusting.
It
I don't
has
care.
it has a taste, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and you can put it in coffee like Owen does, but if you give a kid a glass of goat milk, they won't drink it. But everyone likes cow's milk. It's way better.
Is it the variety though, you think? Like for
Oh,
example, Britons love their Jersey milk
yes.
cows and they're great. But is it because he's got those little Nigerian dwarf ones? He says that they don't taste gamey. Is that maybe you got to experiment? Because I've bought like goat milk butter, and I only use that if I'm making like savory dishes. It's not toast butter, is it? Yeah.
Yes, correct. I
So
didn't know he was making butter. That's
no,
good to
no,
hear.
no. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, once you're into cows, and you
Yeah.
only need one cow. That's the
Is
other
that
thing.
all?
If you have one cow, like you mentioned, a
Right.
Jersey cow will produce less than half the milk of a Holstein,
Oh, is
which is
that
the
right?
actual proper dairy cow. Half,
Okay.
but you'll have more milk than you know what to do with.
Sure.
You'll be giving it to the chickens and the cats. You'll have way more than you know what to do with. So, but the other thing is, the cow is a better converter of grass into protein and fat than the sheep or the goat.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, way better, more efficient, and best of all, less. A herd of sheep will, or a flock of sheep, I guess, they'll trample more grass than they eat.
Okay. Right.
But a
Smart.
cow, you see a cow, she sits
They
there,
just chill out, don't they? Yeah.
they just eat in a line, and they're all facing the same way, and they're very efficient, and their hoof, yeah, their hoof is bigger than a goat's, but compared to their body mass, their hoof is way smaller, so
Yeah.
they travel way less.
And aren't they
Yeah,
like very good for the soil, like the top soil, because they only ever eat the top part, and so the grass has, a chance to regenerate the soil and everything like that. Yeah.
yeah,
So one cow's enough,
cows,
and you get the fertilizer as well. There's a lot
yeah,
going on with the cow.
cows will overgraze, but only if they're
Only if you let
forced
them.
to.
Yeah.
So yeah, so if you're managing your cow, and remember, I'm saying you only need one cow. You could have a family of 12. You only need one cow.
Wow.
You're not going to know what to do with, depending on the variety. If you get a proper milking cow, you're going to have, I think it's 2 gallons a day.
That's
Might
outrageous.
be more than that, but in any case, you're going to have more milk than you. And then eventually, I'm sorry to say, you're going to eat that cow.
I'm not sorry to say that at all. I love beef. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there
And
any?
and the way she gives you milk,
Yeah.
she has to give you a calf every year. Well, if she gives you a female calf, you'll sell that. You'll make good money selling a female. The bull, you just keep him for 6 months and make steaks out of him.
Terrific. What is that?
So
Veal or something? Or is it
no,
baby
no,
cows?
you
No.
you
Okay.
you could wait longer. No, veal's even younger than that. You could
Oh.
wait a year
Okay.
or a year
Yeah.
and a half would be full market
Mm-hmm.
weight. But you don't need to wait a year and a half because you're going to have another calf every year.
Actually, speaking of slaughtering, like, is there like some sort of, I guess maybe it pertains to organic food, but is there some sort of rules surrounding doing that yourself on your own property, or do you have to take them to like an abattoir, or do you have to have a guy come to do it? Or can you do it yourself? Like, what's the
Yeah.
deal with that?
If it's for sale, you have to get it into a licensed facility.
Right. But for home use, yeah.
Yeah, for your own use and for trading with neighbors. Yeah, for a while there, organic standards included on-farm slaughter, but that's really overridden by the health standards of whatever jurisdiction you're in, and they just say no, you can't sell it. That's the bottom line. You can eat it yourself or give it away, but you can't sell it unless it's in a licensed facility. But it's the main thing is to kill it without it knowing,
Yeah,
and then
that's ideal.
to bleed it out thoroughly. That's really the
So
only
like the
two.
opposite of halal ultimately.
Yeah, Yeah, that halal, and for that
So
matter,
cruel.
kosher
Yeah,
are inhumane, and they're not as efficient as our Western system.
totally, totally true. Okay, so I guess ultimately the thing is there anything that, because I remember you were saying again, because I do watch your other videos, you were saying that it's not the worst thing to not eat organic. Well, they make such a big deal about, oh, you must as much as you can get organic, organic, organic. But actually, are there things that don't really matter? Like, for example, I was listening, there's like some doctors nowadays have YouTube channels, and this one guy was saying you don't have to worry about organic avocados because the skin is so thick on the outside, nothing's really penetrating it. And for example, like pecans, there are no like GMO pecans anyway, pecans.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about certain things, and it turns into like a marketing charge you 5 times the price thing. So what do you recommend like to grow in the most natural organic way? And that's really what you should avoid with the pesticides, and then what doesn't really matter.
Yeah, you're right on the thick-skinned
Yeah.
things, or even nuts
Yeah.
that nothing can contact. The other one is bananas.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
they're all clones anyway, so.
yeah, they are. But there's, yeah, even the organic ones have been totally hybridized and cloned, as you say. So yeah, there's really not much point blowing your. Another one is onions, not a lot of point. And then on the other side of the coin, Salty Bear, is things that might seem better organic, but I would really doubt that anyone is growing them organic, like strawberries and
Yeah.
cherries
Yeah.
and peaches. Your soft-skinned, very sweet
Right.
fruits. Holy smokes! I saw a cherry orchard that went organic, and it was half missing. It looked like a hockey player missing half his teeth. The guy lost half of his trees, and he gave up.
We've got a
And,
cherry
and
tree in our backyard.
yeah, and now you have to put there. You can use dormant oil, which is natural,
Okay.
which is organic, but you have to spray that tree, or a worm gets into the cherries.
Really? Oh, we
A lot of
haven't
people
had
don't
a
know that.
problem,
They'll
and I
eat them
don't do
without
anything.
knowing.
Just water it.
Well, now you might be lucky because
Yeah.
it's isolated.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're
We've got a
totally
couple of fruit
isolated.
trees in the backyard, and I don't have
Yeah,
any problems. They
yeah.
mostly go for
So,
the apples, actually. The worms.
oh, really? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Weird.
Now apples a bit easier to grow organic, but yeah, your soft-skinned fruits. See, if you're an organic cherry grower, you're not isolated. So's your neighbor, right?
Right.
And so you're in a whole valley.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really risky to the point where when I see organic cherries, I think, well, who the heck grew those?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just tend to think, nah, they probably something untoward going on. Now, as for what you want to definitely try to find organic,
Yes.
and again trade with neighbors for, that's all of your vegetables. Like, see, I don't like a lot of lettuce. To me, lettuce, even if it's organic, lettuce is just like a big giant solar or radio dish that's just soaking up all the garbage, and there's no nutrition in it.
It's true.
And people like kale and spinach. By the way, with spinach, the reason Popeye ate spinach was back in the 20s. They made a mistake on how much iron it contains, and that mistake persisted right up until
It's not true.
the 80s.
It's not bioavailable.
Yeah, I mean,
it's very low. And actually, I was doing research on this. Spinach
yes.
has a lot of oxalic acid, like a lot of oxalate, and it's really like not good for you. So don't eat
Yes.
spinach. Don't eat spinach.
Yeah. Well, in fact, a lot of vegetables
Almonds are high in it. Very high. Yeah.
yeah, and they're deemed edible because they're not entirely toxic.
Yeah, people
So
forget there's anti-nutrients in vegetables and like leaves. They don't want you to eat them. Like they can't
yeah.
run away. So
Yes, and for a while, the organic industry was pushing that an organic kale plant produces more natural toxins because you're not spraying it to protect it, so it has to beef up. And they sold that for a while as a benefit to us humans, and then it turns out no. As Bruce Ames proves, he's the one who developed the Ames test for to determine if something is carcinogenic or not.
Right.
He determined no, a toxin is a toxin is a toxin.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it was man-made or your kale made it because a worm was nibbling on the edge and so it reacted.
Yes.
Those are carcinogenic still. So yeah, that whole argument. But yeah, back to vegetables in general. that little like it's like a sponge, lettuce and
Okay.
kale. They're just soaking everything up. I don't even eat them, to be honest. And
Yeah.
spinach,
Yeah.
I used to like spinach.
Oh, it tastes horrible.
Yeah, and you got to do so much to make it digestible, like either
Yeah.
boil it or
Butter.
parboil it.
Yeah.
Yeah, butter and salt.
Yeah.
What are you eating then? But your root crops, and then if you really want to get ambitious, we mentioned rye. Some people will get ambitious, and they'll grow grains. They really want to be wholesome and do it right from the field all the way to the loaf of bread sitting on their table. Because, like I say, they'll have a little stone grinder. And yeah, you want to grow rye. Of all the cereals, rye has had the least monkeying done with it, and it's the best. The more, if you can handle 20 or 30% in a loaf of rye, go to 50%. See if, like you said, you like that brick, that black brick. It will be almost black if it's almost pure rye. If you can handle that, great. That's so much better than wheat. We eat way too much wheat.
Yes.
So those are the things I would focus on.
That yeah.
Cows and rye.
Amen. I like it. Yeah, there was what was that video? The one that you were talking to me, you sent me not too long ago, and you were talking about celiac and things in it. Is that the monkeying around that's being done? Is that why people have so much of that gluten intolerance things?
Yeah, celiac disease.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't know too much about it, but I think someone brought that up. And yes,
that angry lady.
So you have your gluten intolerance.
Yes.
Put it this way: there was no gluten intolerance when Jesus said, "Give us this day our daily bread."
Right.
Everyone ate bread, even rich
That's right.
people.
That's right.
Yeah, we've destroyed our own digestive systems, and we've destroyed a lot of our crops by overbreeding them for certain characteristics.
Yeah.
So no one cares. No one buying wheat right now, if they're a flour mill or a bakery, no one cares how much zinc, iron, cadmium. No one cares about that. They only care about the protein number and the falling number. And the falling number determines how puffy it gets as a loaf of bread. That's it.
Yeah,
they don't.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, that they don't like. The falling number is such a anti-nutritional. It's pure.
Yeah.
It's visual almost. I know you kids
I
like.
I didn't know about that. All I know, because when I do baking, is there's like higher protein, like hard red wheat, and then like soft white wheat and like cake flour sometimes it's called. So like the lower gluten will make it more fluffy rather than like bready. So yeah, I didn't know that. But so basically, rye is something that you're not going to get the same results, but if you wanted to eat that, then
if you're eating bread, any bread should have rye in it. I'd say that.
Sure.
And then for pastries, forget it. Rye.
Totally.
And neither is whole wheat going to work for your
No, it
baking.
doesn't. It's terrible. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some people try.
Yeah, no, unsuccessfully. The best you can get is a muffin, maybe, out of it.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I'm very grateful. It's very nice to talk to you. So I think you said you had a book out.
Oh yeah.
I would like to promote you and get you if you'd like to talk about that.
Yeah, it's called "Is It Organic?" And it's about how the organic industry was ruined, as we've discussed. There's a few other things in there as well. But that's been over 10 years now. It's still available. It's self-published.
On Amazon, I saw it.
Is it still? Yeah. I'm surprised they haven't dropped it. A lot of people requested or tried to. I guess I'm not important enough that they dropped it. You'll hear about some authors getting dropped by Amazon.
Yes.
Well, yeah. I'm not on Amazon because I'm good. It's probably because I'm so low selling. Yeah, I'm off their radar, even though a lot of people complained. But yeah, and then it's also available directly through the self-publishing place called Lulu, Lulu. Perfect. And then you'll get a better price on it there. But yeah, the organic industry, just briefly, it started in Germany.
Yes.
And the Nazis loved it, and they were right. Because they didn't have a lot of, they ended up losing the war because they ran out of fuel, basically.
Wow.
That's really why we bombed their oil fields. They were converting coal. They were liquefying coal, which is very inefficient way. Better to just get oil out of the ground and make diesel out of it. But they were liquefying coal. And then we bombed their coal liquefying facilities. And yeah, by the time we got, halfway through France, the Allies were passing columns of tanks and jeeps and howitzers that were just abandoned because the Nazis didn't have fuel. Anyway,
Well, they don't teach that in public school. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's how there's no other way we beat the Nazis. That and firebombing their cities, which was way worse than anything the Hitler's Weimar ever did to London. Oh, it was just it's like 100-1. We bombed entire cities, men, women, and children, refugees. Yeah, like Dresden and Nuremberg. We just incinerated them, and there was nothing there. There was no factory there. Sorry.
Who saw that coming? Wow.
Yeah, but I want to give the Germans credit.
Yes.
Because first of all, it was a German Jew who figured out how to get ammonium nitrate out of the Earth's atmosphere. Wow. And his name was Fritz Haber. He did that in 1917, and that's the basis of conventional farming. Love it or hate it, conventional farming relies on a limitless supply of the key ingredient, of the key fertilizer in food production, which is nitrogen, as you mentioned earlier. Yes. Within 3 years, Rudolf Steiner came along, and he pointed out what we now know in spades, that leads eventually to empty nutrition. And Rudolf Steiner started the biodynamic movement, which became the organic movement. So it's ironic, we get both, the extreme industrial and the extreme wholesome organic, both come from Germany in the World War I, post-World War I era. And then just leading up, just so you know, another interesting statistic, leading up to World War II, when war was on the horizon for Germany, the Department of Agriculture was still the second largest department in Germany, second only to the War Department. So that's how seriously those mean old Nazis, that's how seriously they took that they took domestic food production, not relying on industry, which inevitably requires imports, right?
Yeah.
Inevitably. So yeah, they knew, and it didn't pan out for them. But they right up to like 1941, the German Department of Agriculture was second only to the War Department in Germany. Yeah.
Oh, I was actually listening to a podcast the other day, and actually Germans kind of pioneered the holistic health movement as well. It was hundreds of years ago. They knew about all these things, so they don't get enough credit. History has been tainted with this one, though not a good event. Nevertheless, that's very true.
You're right. Not just organics, which was called biodynamics, but you're right. All of those health food things. The Nazis discouraged people from smoking, and told them to eat better diets.
No pornography. Right. Imagine that.
Yeah. Yes. They were doing all of those things that hopefully people now who are, well, I guess you'd say red-pilled.
Yeah.
A lot of the red-pilled people, they might be embarrassed to find out, but they can be traced back to Nazi Germany. And so last piece to that puzzle, it was only after World War II that the organic industry shifted over to England. During the 30s, anyone in England who was interested in what would become organics, like Lady Eve Balfour, she's the niece of the guy who signed the Balfour Agreement.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was making regular trips over to Germany to find out what they were doing. Yeah. Right. Then the other big one was Sir Albert Howard. He was knighted, I think, after the war for his work on what became organic farming. And then because Germany lost the war, it all shifted to England. And you mentioned, I think in the intro, the British Soil Association.
Yes, Soil Alliance or whatever it is, yeah.
Yeah, and that's when it formed, right? And then it became henceforth the global go-to standard for everyone references that when they're writing their own nation standards. But it came from Germany.
Jawohl. Oh my goodness.
Jawohl.
Fascinating. Well, you are just a wealth of fascinating information. We must chat again. That's very interesting.
That's in my book. Sorry to run on.
No, that's terrific. That's terrific. See, people don't know these types of things, and it's all well and good to talk about which food is the healthiest. Yeah, but where did all this come from? And I think that's very interesting. It's very good. So Lulu.com is where your
Yes.
book is. You can find it on Amazon. And what else? You write for Culture Wars. Is there anything else that we can direct the people to?
No, the only other thing, Salty Bear, is I
Yes,
watch the comment section on any video I do. I abandoned, after
that's where
getting
you are.
fired from everything in Canada, I
Oh
figured why
no.
even go into social media? Like sooner or later they'll just censor me or ban me. So I don't have my own channel or anything. So it's on you. Everything, if someone loves us or hates us for discussing these things,
Yeah.
I'll be monitoring your comment section for the next week or so.
Okay.
And that's the way I do it. I don't have anything of my own. With that said, if anyone wants to contact me, you're welcome to share my contact info.
Will do. Yes, I'll keep you informed if that week passes and there's some interest anew. Okay. Well, thank you so very much for your time. You're very interesting to talk to, and I think there's other topics that you could bring a lot of interesting opinions to. I really enjoyed that article you wrote, the Freddie Mercury one. That was very, very interesting. So maybe we can discuss some of those things next time.
I'd be happy. Yeah,
And
that.
I know you're a man of faith, so we can always discuss that as well. If you're ever interested, of course, I don't want
Yeah.
to, turn this into a Bible study, but it's always something that people thirst for, I think.
Yeah, on that note, you mentioned Freddie Mercury.
Yes.
As I say, he cried out to Jesus. He
Amen.
he did. He did. So we'll just leave that for your listeners for another discussion. But I swear to that. That's what he was doing.
Wow. Well, there you go. It's never too late.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, sorry to take you away from your family time, and thank you very much again. And I will be posting this very soon, so keep in touch. And
Yeah.
yeah, thank you, Misha. Take
Yeah.
care.
And thank you, Salty Bear.
It's a pleasure.
I'm glad I got on your show because I just love your style. And I came across you because you interviewed my boss,
Yeah.
Dr. E. Michael Jones. I think that's one of his best interviews
Oh,
because of
stop.
you. So yeah, I'm not kidding. So it's a real honor to be here on your show. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
it's a pleasure. Thank you. That's so nice to hear. All right.
God bless
Talk
you.
to you, and God bless you. Take care. Bye bye.
Okay, bye now.
Cheers.